always wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail, and the leaves were showing their full colours. Work was gnashing at my spirit, and I now knew of committing crimes against management. I would let out my frustration in nature where I knew I was at peace. The out of doors have always been a part of my life. My father, like his father before him, took me hiking and hunting and fishing my whole life. I've gained a level of respect for nature not many have had the opportunity to experience. In 1970 was approaching, and the leaves began to turn. I slowly put my vacation into management for a whole month off, accruing extra time because I've slowly turned into a workaholic since Dad died, and my time in nature took a hit since. Now was my chance to relive the life I once knew and return to nature. So I left work and headed home to prepare. I unlocked my shed and saw the dust had collected on my gear. The evening was slow to arrive, and a few cold lamps later I had cleaned up my tent and sleeping bag. My tiny cooking pot and the micro stove took time to get clean, and I still needed to clean and oil my .223 in case I needed to shoot a rabbit or a beaver, because I can't carry a few weeks of food without it rotting on my back. The night arrived, and liver willing, I had finally collected the gear I needed. Tomorrow, the trail. I woke up earlier than usual, 4 o'clock in the morning, buttered some toast, gave the neighbours my perishables and a note, and hit the road. Work afforded me the choice of any Ford on the lot, and I grew very attached to the new Mustang, the 1970 model. And I was in love. 351 cubic inches of American muscle, 5.8 litres of displacement paired to a 4-speed manual transmission. I soared down the road, carburetor burning all 4 barrels. My old man would have loved this car. Power steering was a luxury, and the new air conditioning system was downright spoiling me, but the weather didn't go above 60 degrees, so I didn't need it, but I sure did love it. The trail had an entrance about half a day's drive away. There was no way I was going to hike the whole trail this time. I only had 3 weeks, and I wanted to take it very slowly, and I had to reserve the last few days of my vacation on a plane to visit friends and family out west. If I could hike at least half of the length and grab a bus back to my car, I would be happy. I pulled into the small gravel lot before 10 in the morning and unloaded my gear. Finally, I was free. I threw my bag on and slung my rifle around my shoulder, and I was on the trail. I nabbed a small bowl to fish with too, a collapsible micro bowl for light test fish. Figured I'd rather need it and have it than want it and don't. I was passed on and hunger became me. Far too long did I hike last, and my metabolism took a hit for sure. A can of tuna and a cache of crackers later, I was back on the trail. I hadn't passed a single soul since I left my car. The trail was empty. The sun began to dim and I had only an hour of light left. So it was time to set up camp for the night. Of course, no hike is complete without forgetting something, and I forgot duct tape. I always carry a small roll, but time took its toll on me, and I was rusty. The small tear in my tent was a mosquito doggy door the whole night, but I slept tapeless and helpless to seal the hole. The weather was changing, so they weren't as bad. Hours turned to days and steps became miles. I was on the trail for close to a week and food was now gone. The last can of Spam and my remaining ounce of trail mix was depleted, and I could definitely tell I had lost well over 10 pounds already. Neat, back on track to my healthy weight. Mosquitoes may have played a role, but I digress. Miles flew by and my stomach rumbled. Creeks were few and far apart. I knew my next meal would have had to have 4 legs and poor luck, and that's exactly what it had. Down my sights was a mighty fat grouse. I lied about the 4 legs. .223 was a pretty large caliber for grouse, but as long as I didn't hit center mass, I could save the meat and be headed in one shot. Easy peasy. The shot echoed through the valley and the grouse was no more. Unfortunately, I missed his head, but it was a kill shot and the meat was spared. I found a trickle from a spring and a half hour later I had a whole grouse, gutted, defeathered, and now beheaded. Solid couple days of meat, and I had to look to find some chanterelle mushrooms back about 4 miles. I was going to eat like a king. I made a fire right off the trail and roasted the bird on a stick and cooked the mushrooms in my pot with the fat dripped from the bird. Needless to say, every edible ounce was consumed with violent fervour and immense enjoyment. I awoke to a strange sound. Light was only a sliver on the mountains, and echoing throughout the valley was this shriek I've never heard before. I'd be lying if I said I didn't soil myself a little, but I chalked it up to a dying fox. They tend to make weird noises when they're being hunted, so I decided sleep was now impossible and I continued on my way. A whole week has now gone by and I was burning my 8th day. Fishing was a bust at every stream, and while I saw plenty of squirrels, I wanted something slightly larger. Another hiker finally went by me that afternoon, and after a quick conversation, he too heard the noise and decided to carry on. He said a critter got to his back that night and took his waist back, that had his fire starter in it, and told me to hold my stuff close. He handed me a protein bar, said good luck, and went along his way. Nightfall came beautifully. I decided to nab a squirrel earlier and I skinned it. Unfortunately, exhaustion took me, so the squirrel had to wait. Hung from a tree about 30 yards away from predators, I tied the rodent up and went to bed. No fire tonight, too tired. Sleep comes easy to the sound of nature, crickets and the bugs, some water in the distance, and the coo of an owl. Nothing, and I mean nothing, wakes you up faster than when they all fall silent. My eyes shot open to the sound of nothing. Absolute quiet. My watch said 3 and my sweat began to flow. A bear is near, I knew it. Coyotes make noises, and wolves weren't present, says the Forest Service. What I really feared was a cougar. Those things actively hunt hikers, and I haven't been scared by them before, but that was when my dad was with me. One lonely cricket chirped, and the forest returned to noise again. I fell back asleep slowly, until my watch hit 9 and my eyes opened. Shit, I wanted to start earlier, 6 at the latest, and here it was 9. Breakfast had to wait, and the campsite needed tearing down. The tent was packed, and I was hungry, but food had to wait until lunch. I walked through the line that I hung the squirrel, and the line hung empty. God damn it. I knew a damn cougar was here, and that little bastard took my squirrel. What else could have made the leap to get it? I untied the knot around the tree and rolled up the cord. I expected its head to still be attached to the line, but it wasn't. In fact, nothing, no knot even, cut completely clean. Cut. Son of a bitch. A hiker came through and took my squirrel. That 2-bit piece of shit also had the gall to throw the line and retie it to the tree. Who does that? Game was hard to find on the trail now, so losing that little rodent snack really set me off. If I run into the fucker that took my squirrel, he's eating fist. Angry, I took the map out and saw I could go off trail for about 10-ish miles, and maybe I could nab a beaver up in a valley. So I did. Exit stage right, and I was off the trail. If I simply go up and above the next ridge, down the valley, through the next 2 hills and valleys, I can reach a larger stream where something of respectable size could be my next meal. Birds were everywhere and what seemed like untold quadrillions of chipmunks, but a 2.23 would simply turn them into red mist, so they weren't viable options. Didn't stop me from turning one into said mist though. Had to make sure my rifle was still scoped in, and it wasn't. For the price of 1 chipmunk, I recentered my scope. I came to the bottom of a tributary to the stream of endless bounty. Daylight was warning, and my stomach was speaking angry German. I pushed on. The stream was around the cut and down the way about an hour. I had to get there before nightfall if I was going to get a chance to eat in the morning. Finally I made it to the water, pissed in it, drank from it, and went to bed. No fire again, and this time it was cold. I awoke to the sounds aplenty. Birds, squirrels, bugs. Slap. I knew it. Slap. Yup. Slap. Food. A beaver got angry at my presence and began to slap the water. Little did I know he was ringing his own dinner bell of death. I didn't even get out of bed when I righted my rifle, sighted his chest, and with one squeeze of my finger the beaver was sent to the great big dam in the sky. The best part was that the stream floated him right to me. Thank God. I was too tired to fetch him at the moment. I skinned him, packed the hide in a trash bag for home, and began to roast. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, but slightly charred beaver tail is actually really good. The hide needed to dry. I'm adult, so I removed it from the sack and hung it on a tree. I reeked. Over a week without a shower, hiking the trail and with critter bits on me, I needed to bathe. Off came the clothes, boots and beanie, and dipped into the stream. It opened into a pond where I did most of my hygienic ritual. woods with me offense for rear-end receipts tends to ripen the human experience. The water was cold and the air felt icy after plunging, but it was time to keep going. I had a decent day's hike to continue off trail until it runs back into the trail. Out of the water and my clothes were gone. Shirt, pants, socks, and a pair of questionable underwear. Gone. I knew I wasn't alone anymore, and it wasn't a hiker or a cougar. My bag was still there, and so was my second and only change of clothes. My bathing slippers were gone, too. I was livid, but now I'm scared. I wasn't alone, and I'm being watched. I saw nobody, but they're there, somewhere. I quickly got clothed and packed up camp when I saw the bastard stop my hide and my beaver meat. I hurried past the pond and made my way over the larger hill. Something didn't feel right. I may not be watched, but I definitely wasn't alone anymore. Down the hill became a valley. I slowly walked the whole time out of fear, but soon fear became me. I came to a narrow path, whose path, fuck me, I don't know, but it was indeed a path. No animals made this path. With fresh sweat and fear, I decided right, not left. Right was the direction of the main trail, and I needed that yesterday. Lunchtime came, and all I had was the right haunch of a beaver I cooked last night. The rest was taken. I had to stop and eat, but I was locked in fear of being seen. This person or people steal without any problem, and I was far from trusting they wouldn't do more. I found myself in a small divot not 15 feet from the path, empty and just big enough to crouch in. I popped open my bag and began ripping strips of beaver until I had eaten nearly all of it. I had to save the rest for tomorrow because I didn't know when my next opportunity for food was coming. I zipped my bag up, took a step out of the depression in the soil and caught up on a root and tripped. Pot clanked, bag jolted, and below me was my foot, lodged inside of a root. I kneeled down to free my foot and lost my breath. It was a rib cage. My foot was lodged inside a rib cage. Horrified, I snapped the ribs and looked behind me in the hole I once used as a snack spot. Subtle but ever present was the mass of many bones. A hand, a foot, another rib cage. How did I miss them before? At the end of the hole was one socket, a skull half sunken into the dirt, one dark and empty eye staring at me. It spoke to me. Leave, now, stay, join. My mind made it up, but the words were there. I returned to the path, now full of beaver, but hunger won't be an issue anymore. Soon another hole, more bones, another hole, then another, and another. More and more and more, dozens of holes, shallow graves upended by rain and critters, hundreds of dead. As I followed the path as quickly as possible, the holes began to become fewer and fewer, but the bones became redder and redder. Fresh graves. Who are these people? Who killed them? Was it my clothes thieves? My beaver burglars? Fuck my squirrel. How long have they been following me? Are they following me? Am I being hunted? The graves came to an end at the base of the next hill. This time fresh bits of meat still present. Obvious gnaw marks. Human. No skulls. Clothing sat by their bones. I had a whole day left before I could get to the main trail, and the sunlight only had an hour. I knew I had to power through the night, so I hit the path even harder. This was a mistake. I had eaten only bits of beaver and my pace was much faster than I was used to, and I really should have just went to Yosemite. The light was a mere hum above the hills when I heard talking. English. Yes. No. Yeah, definitely English. Fuck, I had to hide. I looked around and the only place I saw was a collection of boulders against the bluff. I hurried over and in my haste I dropped my aid back. God damn it, leave it. I snuck above and around the stones and wedged myself in between a slot where I fell in. Fucking rocks are hard to land on, but at least I was hidden. I could see the path from my stealthy stonework, where the words got louder and louder, and the sound of footsteps became apparent. Back, back, walk, cloth, one said, pulling on his clothes. My clothes. Step, step, ah, who, said the other, pointing at his feet where my slippers were. No, he said, sliding them off his bare, filthy feet. He picked them up and flung them at the rocks. They fell through into my hole I was in. Anger erupted from the other and he swung at his friend, slugging him in the head. A gurgling grr blew from his mouth, cries as if his mum had taken his toys away. The other, still angry, approached the rocks. Fuck. I leaned back in my hole, the only light coming in from the twilight dusk in the crack I was watching from. He came closer, crunch. He came closer, crunch, crunch, snap, pop, crunch. The leaves and twigs broke under his bare feet, getting louder and louder with each advancing step. Quiet, I thought. He's coming. Came from him as he ledged his body on top of my rocks. Dead. I was dead. No fucking way was I to survive this. He leaned down on his stomach, eyes and arm reaching down into my hiding hole. The slippers. He was after the fucking flip-flops that his black-eyed compatriot was wearing. My fucking flip-flops. They were out of reach. He'll need to slip in here with me to get them, and that was not happening. I slowly grabbed one, careful to avoid the light beam glowing from the crack in the rocks. I silently rose the flip to the fingertips of the man, where he just gripped it. Caillou, wah ha ha, he screamed, throwing it at his friend, hitting him in the eye. Screams flew from the other, followed by tears and wailing. Yeah, flip-flops fucking hurt when thrown, especially when your eyes are already black and swollen. He was without the flop. He had the one, but not the other. He got on his belly once more, peeked into my hiding hole, and saw the other sitting in here. I was dead. My rifle was useless in here, and the fact that I fit all of it was at all was a miracle, let alone with my back behind me. His hand was only a foot from my head, reaching for the last slipper. He didn't know it was well out of reach, but so was it to I. I needed to help him, and he needed to not come down here. His hand was in the way of me grabbing it, so I waited until he pulled his hand out, peeked again, and took his hand further. I had only a second to grab it, and I did. He recoiled his arm, peeked again, and saw it was gone. Shit. He knows I'm down here, and the slipper is gone, in my hand. He groaned, and I fell even more silent, even more so. He peeked his whole head down, turned his neck, but couldn't see the slipper. The back of his head faced me, unable to spot me. Sweat dripped from my nose. He yanked his head out and reinserted his arm, this time with more gusto and power, fingertips scraping at the bottom, looking blindly for that last slipper. My chance was here, so I calmly slipped it into his range of grasp, and he yanked it from the rocks. bullets and shit sprayed through the crack and painted on me. It was warm and it smelled horrific. I gagged silently. Make any noise and I was dead. And that thought kept repeating in my mind. Be quiet or die. Be quiet or die. Silence. Death. He bent down, grabbed the tail and ran to his friend. He slipped the flip-flops on for himself, took 3 steps, made a growl of discomfort and slipped the footwear off and threw them into a shallow grave. That didn't bode well for the bruised fellow, as he too threw them out only to get a black eye for doing so. He screamed, grabbed a stone and dented the other guy's skull in. He fell motionless. Sloppy laughter commenced, blood flowing from the skull, and then sponge, crack, spleege. The man continued to stomp the other's skull in. The sound of brain matter screamed through his toes. He then bent down, grabbed the raccoon, spit on his dead brethren, and ran down the path, laughing and crying all the same. I inhaled deeply. For once I was yet alone to make a small noise. The oxygen revived my horror-stricken body and I sat motionless. The thought kept repeating in my mind, you must run, run, run. So I stepped up, grabbed the ledge of the boulder above me, where the now dead man reached for my flip-flops. When I slipped, my foot hit a small rock and it broke, loud, like a walnut shell in an empty auditorium. Pain didn't register, so I peeked down to realize my foot didn't break, but the rock beneath me crumbled. I felt relief, but the whole damn forest had to hear that rock exploding, and I needed to get out now. My body, my legs, and my left foot slipped from the opening. My pack and rifle went first. No way everything fit on the way back up. And if my luck couldn't have been any worse, my right foot was stuck in the damn rock I broke. And the fucking thing wouldn't fit through the crack. I looked down again and saw the heel of my boot being chewed on by teeth. It wasn't a rock, but a skull now clamped onto my boot. Freaked, I yanked my leg and the skull dislodged, thank God. In fact, don't thank God. The other man was returning. He must have heard the skull crack open. His steps grew louder and louder. Fuck, fuck, fuck. I slid down the boulder. Darkness took the forest. I hid behind the boulder when the man began to run. Fear once took over yet again, yet I stood still. He kept from the ground and scurried up the boulder where I once came, lay down and put his whole upper body down the hole. The man stood back up, broken skull in hand, raccoon in the other. He chuckled and looked at the body of his victim, yelled, "Yous Baba broke too," and held the skull at his dead compatriot, striking his lifeless puddle of head slush. He climbed off of the stone and walked to the body, kicked it at least a dozen times, hooting and hollering and championing his kill. He gave the man one last bigger kick. This time I could hear the ribs snap. He stepped over him, pulled out his pecker and pissed on the corpse, laughing as the piss mixed with the brain matter like a hose hitting mud. A zipper zipped and he walked away. 5 steps away. Crunch. "Ah!" he shouted. The feral man looked down to see what he had broken, and saw a small red pack, my aid pack. He broke the weak plastic. This wasn't here before. He must have thought because his attention went directly to the skull, and then the hole in the rocks. Oh my fuck, I thought. He knows I'm here. I have to run now. So I did. Darkness as my ally, I hauled arse. Behind me were screams and the sound of running. I was being followed. I ran even harder, much harder than I ever thought I could, which wasn't much. much. The screaming behind me got quieter and the running footsteps soon lay silent. I couldn't go further, my lungs physically couldn't handle the pressure. I leaned against a tree and without any warning, a feeling crept up my back and I proceeded to throw up. Beaver bits, bile, and blood. I pushed myself too far, but I had to. Survival was now obligatory, no mandatory. Exhaustion swept across me. I felt the rush of adrenaline leave me and the result was a massive crash. I leaned against another tree and fell unconscious. I awoke to flies and stench. Gross, I thought. I had puked on my shoes. I stood up and instantly felt something was wrong. My damn foot, ankle actually. A fucking tooth had dislodged from the skull last night into my ankle. And I was too fucked up to notice. Flies surely did though. I stumbled to the trickle stream nearby and dislodged it, washed it. I continued down the trail. At this point I reloaded my rifle. It would have come in handy had I now completely shit my pants running away last night. I ate the last nibble of beef I had and retook my bearings. In the mad dash for my life I had completely lost the path and thus my follower. The map lined up the surrounding hills and finally I knew where I was. About a mile from the path and another 6 or 7 to the trail over the hill to my right. I set forth. Unfucking believable. As I began the climb, I smelled smoke. Fear took me once again. I continued to climb until I reached the head of this hill, where I hunkered down. Beneath me was now shacks, 2 of them smoke from one, and a large lean built into the trees. I could hear the sounds of chickens and goats. Hung on the lean were shoes, no boots, hiking boots, hundreds of them. Each one held the soil for plant, beans maybe. Chimes hung up from the corners of the trees, skulls and bones and sticks and stones, clacking, clattering. From the bushes came a man, last night's man, raccoon in hand. He seemed tired and now injured. His foot was bleeding and bad. The plastic from the first aid had punctured his foot and the bleeding had never stopped from last night. That's how I survived. He couldn't catch up. The irony of his situation to have injured himself with the very tools he could be using to fix it. If only he knew what they were. The man entered the shack that had smoke rising from the top. Screaming commenced, followed by crying and the wailing, "No, no, please, brah, brah, me step, step." Then a deafening shot rang out, pieces of the shack blown off, silence, a shotgun, no other sound could do that. And I could definitely say that man was now dead. The door busted open and 3 men ran out. One had the aid pack in his hand, the other the raccoon, and the last was the flip-flops. He went back for the flip-flops. They ran into the other shack, came out this time wearing belts, and each now holding a gun. I had to go, and now. I dipped behind the hill and made my way towards the path. Haste was an understatement. In quick time I found the path and took the route towards the trail. There was no time for rest, and if I did the math right I could be at the trail by dusk. Hunger no longer bothered me, yet my thirst was rabid. I stopped at trickles and drank, looking back at every turn. Minutes became hours, and hours were miles. The map did not lie. I was only a valley away from the trail. In 15, maybe 20 minutes, I was back inside known territory, safer than before, but not out of the woods. But I had to hurry. Light was dimming, and I wanted to be on the trail now. I shimmied down the hillside, ankle sore and body exhausted. Reaching the valley, I had to solve my ankle problem. It was showing signs of early infection and all I had was hand sanitizer. It had to do. I rested upon a log, a trail now within sight, not 200 yards away. I removed my blood-soaked boot and my reddened sock. No active bleeding, but the ankle was swollen and sore. I knew it was going to hurt, but I did it anyway. And with one embarrassing fart from the sanitizer bottle, alcohol and lavender seeped into the tooth hole in my ankle. Fuck me if it didn't burn like the dickens, and I wanted to scream. I really, really did. But I knew if I did, they'd hear it, and it was as good as dead. I guess it didn't really matter. An echo in the distance as a shot rang out. I looked around, dipped behind the log, and with haste I put on my sock and boot. Another shot rang, striking the log. Fuck, they found me. Another, then another. They got closer and closer. I knew that if I didn't get up and run, I was simply waiting to get shot behind this log. The next shot rang and I saw my opportunity. I bolted upright and ran. 150 yards. 100, 75, 50, 40, 20, 10, 5. Finally, the trail. They were still behind me, catching up quick. I turned around where I saw in the distance a man with a gun sprinting towards me. Maybe 100 yards. The other two were behind him another 100 yards. Make a stand, you fucking fool. So I did. I turned and faced him. Little did he know I too had a rifle. I raised it and he stopped in his tracks. He now knew I wasn't a mere rabbit in the game of prey. He began to run again. I couldn't stay still, and when his chest was in my sights, I let loose around. My eyes peeked above the scope, his body still sprinting towards me. 100 feet left. I missed. I wrecked another round, this time my eye below the scope followed the rail and the sight line. He was close and I could now see the buttons on his filthy plaid shirt. I squeezed the trigger and his body, still moving forward, came to an instant dive into the ground. I hit his chest and blew his heart and lung out behind him. The other two, still 100 yards behind, saw it and fell to their knees. They cried and wailed and then stood back up and charged. I didn't hesitate to turn around and book it. The trail climbed and light was now gone. I was far from exhausted, prompted to near dead. I could see the valley below where I killed the man. I could see his body from where I was, a mere tiny dot in the distance, being dragged away by his sons. Brothers, who cares? The next intersection on the trail was miles ahead. Another day's hike and this ankle of mine was not getting better. The fiery alcohol had stemmed the infection, but only for now, and had to be reapplied. My watch was broken and the stars were out. The moon was high, so it must have been past midnight, maybe closer to 1 or 2. I stripped my foot, doused the wound in liquid pain yet again, and then tied a remnant of shirt around it, also soaked in lavender alcohol. The pain was unbearable now, the swelling became larger, but I had to sleep. Fuck the tent, the mosquitoes, the bedding. Being this tired meant nothing to comfort. In fact, they were slowing me down. I passed out against the tree as I watched the 2 dots of fire slowly drag their dead away down in the valley. I woke up hot and cold. The infection was slowly turning for the worse, and now I'm out of sanitizer. Painfully I stood up, sore and stiff and tired still. I began my jaunt to the next exit of the trail. The map said 10 or so miles, and so it was. I kept up a decent pace, given my situation. By noon I was halfway there, glad to know they weren't behind me, as far as I knew, that is. I kept up until I heard the crunch of soil ahead of me, like they accepted anything to dull the pain. We smoked together for a few minutes, as I recall the last day and a half. He didn't believe it, but given my state, he seemed to have believed at least some of it. He then said he could radio the town where he worked and have an ambulance meet me at the trail's next exit, of which I very much agreed. Any help whatsoever was kindly taken. As I got up and began to hike, he said that he was going to keep going. I told him everything I said was true and that he was not going to survive them. Nothing changed his mind, and my own life was still in the balance if this angle doesn't get worked on. So I headed forth, and he kept on. His body was found amongst the shallow graves months later, eaten and mutilated, and his bones were found as tools in the shacks. I kept on. I was only an hour from the end of this nightmare when I heard the echo from behind me. A shot rang out. I feared for my fellow hiker's life, but alas, his was now over. They were still after me, and his death delayed them right. His life given was my life saved. I was at the Y intersection, left, trail domain, right, exit half mile. What seemed like years, I trudged forward until I saw the lights of an ambulance in the distance. I could hear traffic and I could smell society. Come on, I told myself, do it. Just another 100 yards. Push, push, nothing. Collapsed. I awoke in a hospital bed. Two nurses and a doctor were there speaking to my roommate. The TV on the wall said to the local news. Breaking news, mass graves found near Appalachian Trail. I spoke, Ma'am. Ma'am. The nurse turned around, surprised to see me. I struggled to breathe. Inside my mouth and throat was a breathing device. Ma'am, I said again, gurgling on the tubes. She ran over and slid it out from me. What a relief. Where am I said, still blinded by the room's clean white walls and bedding. Mercy, Virginia Hospital, she said. You were found by paramedics on the trail. Not 1 minute from the exit. You went septic, your kidneys began to shut down, and your blood was toxic. Fuck, okay, what's going on? I asked, pointing to the television. Some US Marshal went hiking and never came back. His office sent a search team into the trail where they found, not too far off either, mass graves. I guess they found one body of a man that had his head bashed and another that was shot in the chest. Lucky you weren't there to see it, huh? She said, oblivious to the fact I saw it all. They found a settlement up yonder where another body was found, head just gone, shotgun. Boy, those elves sure can be spooky. Understatement, grave understatement. Did they find anyone? I asked. Well, they found the poor fellow, Marshall. He was eaten by the wildlife, they say. Murder-suicide, they think, by a serial killer. Killed his brother, his part, and then blew his head off in a cabin up them hills, she attested. They're still digging up bones. What day is it? I asked, seeing decorations on windows and walls. It's Halloween, she yells happily. I'm happy you're awake to see it. You've been out for over a month and some change, darling. I've changed your bedding and pots since you got here. You nearly died half a dozen times and did die twice. What, we got you, darling, we got you. She was pleasant. 2 weeks passed and I relearned to walk and to swallow. Doesn't take long for the body to weaken and lose those abilities. I called my boss, fired. Ends up nobody knew who I was and didn't care to find me. That's fine, I've no family left, so that adds up. My job is mine, with a signed affid of it from the doc about what happened. Though, but I doubt I'll return. But it was time to leave and no car. Shit, my car. I called the tow yards and the sheriff. No known tow of Mustangs since, so it was still there. A few $100 and a bag of booze got me a taxi to the